Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, April 16th, 2024 Washington County Board of Commissioners meeting. Clerk Moss, could you do us the honors, please?
Certainly, Chair Harrington. The Washington County Board of Commissioners, also meeting as the Board of Directors for Clean Water Services and all other county service districts, is now meeting this regular session, April 16th, 2024. Commissioner Treese?
Here.
Commissioner Rogers?
Here.
Commissioner Willie?
Here.
Vice Chair Fye?
Present.
Chair Harrington?
Here. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is public communication. This is an opportunity for members of our community, whether here present in the auditorium or online, to come and speak before the Board of Commissioners for up to 2 minutes an individual. Clerk Moss, do we have anyone who wishes to do so?
We do, Madam Chair. First up, we have Addie Smith, followed by Duncan Shields. So, Addie, please come forward.
Can everybody hear me okay? Hello, my name is Addie Smith. I live in Bethany. Where's the timer? Okay, here we go, sorry. Hello, my name is Addie Smith. I live in Bethany. I am speaking before the Washington County Commissioners. The Washington County Circuit Court judges not only discriminate against and violate the laws of Black defendants whom come before their court, but also to the Black attorneys that represent anyone coming before their court. The racism, discrimination, and violations of the laws is so bad that even the sheriffs in this county are allowed to behave this way, all with impunity. Judge Menchaca is Mexican. He is the equivalent in terms of racism, discrimination, and violations of the law as Justice Clarence Thomas. He is the Mexican Clarence Thomas. However, the difference between Justice Clarence Thomas and Judge Ricardo Menchaca is this: there are codes of conduct and ethics that Judge Menchaca has to follow. He must follow, and he is not. Both Judge Menchaca and Justice Clarence Thomas violate the laws of the state and of the United States, respectively. But Menchaca has codes of conduct and ethics that he simply must adhere to. Judge Menchaca isn't the only judge in the Washington County Circuit Court whom violates the laws of this state with impunity. Judges Kathleen Proctor, Eric Boucher, Brandon Thompson, and others do as well, with impunity. When complaints are filed against them with the Commission on Judicial Conduct, the excuse from Executive Director Rachel Mortimer is that her office needs more funding to hold these judges accountable. Rachel Mortimer should not be the Executive Director, just like these judges must be voted out, and I am going to start getting people registered to vote to do exactly that, because I am not afraid of any of you or any of those judges, and if you can't do your job, you have to go.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Next, we have Duncan Shields. Duncan?
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having me. My name is Duncan Shields. I live in the unincorporated area of Aloha. And my issue today is livability with roosters. I think this has been kind of a thing lately, but I've lived in my home since 2015, and now my next door neighbor has decided to get a rooster. And not only does it keep me up in the morning, I work late at nights, but it also makes noise in the afternoons. So I was inspired to come here today because I had already contacted Animal Control, which referred me to Code Enforcement, which referred me to lending my voice as to what I could possibly do to express my concerns. I watched a video on April 2nd of this year, which was in regards to a gentleman that has the similar issue, but it's more intense, apparently. He's got a bunch of roosters all over the place. And what I'm here to do today is just express my opinion on what he said about the 200 feet mark of within the dense urban populated areas, which is where I live. And I wanted to tell you that I agree with that, and I think that that's a good start with something such as this. I've never had to deal with this before, and it's kind of disturbing. I have trouble sleeping, most people do, and I understand that. But it is annoying. It's worse than a dog. And dogs can be dealt with because you can call animal control if your neighbor doesn't comply or doesn't want to work with you in any way. But there's nothing I can say to the neighbor because there's no law against it within these unincorporated areas. So that's all I wanted to say, and I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shields. Would any other member in the auditorium wish to provide comment for up to 2 minutes on any county-related topic? Give you just a moment to raise your hand, start coming forward. Not seeing one. Would anyone online via Zoom wish to provide public comment for up to 2 minutes on any county-related topic? Give you just a moment to utilize raise hand function. Not seeing any hands. Chair Harrington.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. And with that, we'll proceed with today's consent agenda, which consists of 14 items, 1 set of minutes, 1 item from Facilities, Fleet, and Parks, 1 item from IT, 1 item from Assessment and Taxation, 1 item from the County Administrative Office, 4 from Housing Services, 1 from Finance, 1 from Health and Human Services, 1 from Human Resources, and 2 from Land Use and Transportation. What are the wishes of the commission?
Move for approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt today's consent agenda. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next, we'll move on to proclamations, and today we have 2 separate proclamations. The first one is to proclaim April 22nd, 2024 Earth Day. And we have some department representatives here. Hello, are you James Douglas?
I am.
Terrific. Thank you for joining us today to bring this to life.
Absolutely. It's good to see you all this morning. Good morning, Chair Harrington and Board. My name is James Douglas, Sustainability Program Manager. I'm incredibly happy to be here to present this year's Earth Day proclamation to all of you, and to give voice to all the fantastic sustainability efforts taking place at the county, not just from our office, but more so from the fantastic colleagues that we get to work with. The history of Earth Day in the U.S. is a pretty amazing one. Oh, I've got a clicker. I will use that. The first Earth Day was celebrated in 1970 to raise awareness for environmental issues. It's an example of public support leading to bipartisan action, including the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, and updates to the Clean Air Act. Earth Day is a worldwide celebration that occurs every year, and just like in 1970, the why that Earth Day focuses on is an excellent reminder and is grounding for the work that we continue to do today. These, of course, include the always important cleaner air and cleaner water, but more so than just that, it's about the people, the plants, the animals, and the environment that benefit when we keep these goals front of mind. Even for those of us that work in the environmental fields daily, this is an excellent reminder of why we do what we do. In recent months, the Office of Sustainability has been working through a strategic planning process that's occurring across the county, and we're considering how we shape sustainability goals that weave into the larger county mission. This is already somewhat in practice as we continue to work with a One Washington County approach in partnership with public health on our community climate efforts. We are starting to expand this collaboration to support the incredible climate resilience work that's already occurring at the county in different departments such as housing, community development, emergency management, among several others. As we support these community efforts, we always want to make sure that we're leading and working by example with our amazing facilities and fleet teams on energy conservation and management, as well as continuing to incorporate sustainability best practices into our internal operations. There's a lot of climate work and sustainability work going on at the county, not just in one department, as I'm sure you gathered from the previous slide. One step to a more cohesive One Washington County approach to this work is a central place for the community to learn about this topic. In the next 2 weeks, you can keep an eye out for a new climate webpage that will allow residents to gain background information, as well as resources on climate change, such as tools to reduce energy consumption, all the way to things such as natural hazards. It also highlights county efforts across departments and provides information to those who may want to take steps on their own to improve resilience or reduce emissions. I want to thank Highland with our climate and health team, as well as Carolina from our sustainability team, for the incredibly thoughtful work that they put into this project. Before I read the proclamation, I want to make a few announcements on behalf of the Solid Waste and Recycling team, just to highlight some of the amazing Earth Day themed events that they have going on. They're partnering again this year with the Westside Planet Alliance to host the annual PlanetCon event on April 20th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Portland Community College Rock Creek campus. They also have recycling collection there for items that can't go into the recycling bin at home and other fantastic sustainability-focused activities. They are also hosting an Earth Month online scavenger hunt that runs through April into May. If you haven't had the chance to look at this, you can download the Goose Chase mobile app to play online and win prizes, and you can find out more information on this on the Solid Waste and Recycling webpage.
Good morning, Chair Harrington and Board. Marnie Kyle, I'm one of the ACAs, and sorry I was a little slow I'm a little slow these days, but really the only reason I wanted to come up was to introduce JT, who you've met. James is how you'll find him in the directory, but JT is what he goes by. He came to us from Texas, and I just wanted you all to know I am just thrilled with what has happened just in the short few months that he's been here. And he also has an incredible partner, Carolina, who has been with the program for several years, and they are just energetic. They are subject matter experts, and we're going to see some really great things from JT with this small and mighty team.
Appreciate that. Thank you. So with that, I will go ahead and read the proclamation. Whereas the first Earth Day on April 22nd, 1970 is credited with launching the modern environmental movement, and whereas Washington County recognizes that human-caused climate change is seriously impacting the health, integrity, and stability of ecosystems, economies, and communities on a global, national, and local scale, and whereas Washington County emphasizes the role of sustainability to create a shared understanding of climate change and how it impacts the health of our communities and our environment, inform decision-making, and protect future generations. And whereas Washington County affirms the validity and importance of climate science and climate data to make educated and informed decisions in planning, policy development, and program operations. And whereas Washington County acknowledges the need for climate adaptation and resilience actions and strategies in the community. And whereas Washington County establishes metrics for sustainability, evaluation, and tracks building energy, fuel, water, waste, travel, and purchasing to better inform decision-making through a sustainability lens. And whereas Washington County is a statewide leader in strategic energy management through efficient use of existing energy infrastructure, conservation strategies, investments in renewable energy and electric vehicles, and the implementation of a county energy management policy. And whereas Washington County celebrates the collaboration between internal departments, neighboring jurisdictions, and community partners, which enables the execution of sustainability strategies and actions. And whereas Washington County environmental protection and natural resources are of special importance to the county residents, agriculture, and businesses, driving community well-being and economic prosperity. And whereas Washington County acknowledges the disproportionate burden placed on frontline communities, including Black and Indigenous people, communities of color, older adults, and children, to deal with the effects of climate change. And whereas all people, regardless of race, gender, income, sexual orientation, gender identity, ability, or national origin, have a right to a healthy, sustainable environment. And whereas Washington County recommits to its mission of sustainably serving the public and its employees through a human-centered approach that supports health, equity, integrity, and collaboration. Now, therefore be it resolved that on this 16th day of April 2024, the Washington County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim April 22nd, 2024 as Earth Day and calls on the people of Washington County to observe this month with appropriate programs and activities and use this as an opportunity to re-energize their innovative spirit to conserve energy and water, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and improve public health and quality of life.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. What are the wishes of the commission regarding this proclamation?
Can I make a comment before we do that?
Certainly.
Real quickly, JT, welcome to the team. Thank you very much for being here. And I have to give a shout out to Clean Water Services. As I said in work session there, Jack, that email, I know it came personally from you at 5:06 this morning, so thank you very much for that. But it's a good reminder of Earth Day and what Clean Water Services is doing as well. So thank you for that, and thank you, JT, for bringing this proclamation forward.
Absolutely.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adopting today's proclamation, please vote by raising your hand. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. And I will just add my comments that I really appreciate the integrated approach that we're taking here at Washington County. So onward ho we go. All right, next we have a second proclamation for today, a first of its kind for us as the new commission. And this is to recognize that we are a county government. And this month of April is also National County Government Month. And as such, we have a new proclamation before us, thanks to the framework from the National Association of Counties organization. So I believe, Commissioner Fye, you're going to start us off reading this proclamation.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Proclamation, Board of Commissioners for Washington County, National County Government Month, April 2024. Whereas the nation's 3,069 counties serving more than 330 million Americans provide essential services to create healthy, safe, and vibrant communities, and
whereas counties fulfill a vast range of responsibilities and deliver services that touch nearly every aspect of our residents' lives, and
whereas Washington County, Oregon, and all 36 counties of Oregon take pride in our responsibility to protect and enhance the health, well-being, and safety of our residents in an efficient and cost-effective ways, and
whereas, under the leadership of the National Association of Counties President Mary Jo McGuire, NACO is highlighting county leadership through the lens Forward Together, celebrating the role of county governments in connecting, inspiring, and leading as intergovernmental partners. And
whereas that role includes a responsibility to inspire county residents and fellow local government partners, for example, cities and specialty service districts, to engage with their communities and to lead by highlighting our strength as intergovernmental partners. And whereas each year since 1991, the National Association of Counties has encouraged counties across our country to elevate awareness of county responsibilities, programs, and services. And whereas Washington County, Oregon, has a mission to provide excellent and cost-effective services that support healthy, peaceful, safe, and sustainable communities, and encourage meaningful participation in community activities and county governance. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Washington County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim April 2024 as National County Government Month and encourage all county officials, employees, schools, and residents to participate in county government celebration activities. What are the wishes of the commission?
second.
All those in favor of adopting this proclamation, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. Thank you. All right. Next, we'll move on to presentations. We have one presentation today. It is with regard to the Homeless Services Annual Work Plan for this current fiscal year, FY 23-24, also known as FY 24, as well as for year 4 of the program, our upcoming fiscal year, FY 2024-25, also known as FY 25. welcome to Jess Larson, the Assistant Director of Homeless Services, and Nicole Sting, our Strategic Initiatives and Relations Manager.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Board. Pleasure to be with you all this morning, bringing you this continued update and forward projection of where we're going with the wonderful supportive housing services measure that was approved by voters in 2020. As the Chair described, we are presenting to you an update on where we're at with year 3, work underway as we close out we're in the midst of the last quarter, and we're, as we do every year, planning for year 4 in conjunction with the budget process and all of the data that we pull in with each of our quarterly reports to understand what is still needed in our community, what is next, how do we continue this important, critical work going forward into year 4 of the Supportive Housing Services Program. So with that, we'll just get right underway. I have some background slides to present for you, and then I'll turn it over to my colleague, Nicole Sting, to walk you through our ambitious yet achievable goals that we are proposing for the year 4 of our program. So as a reminder, where we have been in years 1, 2, and 3 so far, we really focused on building out that system of care from scratch. You were there with us, those new shelter beds that we needed to open up for year-round services and services to adults and couples who weren't otherwise able to access shelter in Washington County before this measure outside of the winter months. And of course, expanding those housing options. We had very few housing options for people to move from shelter into. And so now we have hundreds, thousands of housing capacity to better serve our community so people can move through shelter into housing stably. Year 2 was a continuation of that work, both in expanding our shelter system, our outreach system. We added on top of the work and more integration across that system of care, connecting people to stable housing options. Year 3, we're honing in on refining that system. We are still building, as you will see. We're still creating new capacity and moving people from homelessness into housing. But more and more, the work is around refining the mechanisms, the training, the systems behind the scene to make this more of a well-oiled system of care so people can move through. And we're going to continue that focus on sustaining and strengthening our system through further improvements so people can move through the system, and also adding some critical infrastructure. You're well aware of our work on permanent shelter programs that were designed to be shelter buildings. We're adding access centers, places where unsheltered people can go who aren't in those shelter programs, able to connect with services. We're also looking to add transitional and recovery programs to our suite of housing solutions, because sometimes PSH can be a bridge too far for folks who aren't quite ready for the independent requirements of having a lease in their legal responsibility. So more of that critical system infrastructure to ensure the system is improved in year 4. And you'll hear more about that in our goals we're proposing for year 4. This is just a reminder slide. You've seen it before. Our homeless services system of care here in Washington County is a braiding of resources from the federal, state, and local levels. Primarily, the supportive housing services measure funds our homeless services system of care. That's the 91% of that pie chart that is in the color blue. But we also importantly have added resources from our state partners at OHCS that were initiated under the governor's executive orders last year and now are being sustained in 2-year increments. And of course, the continuum of care funding from the federal level, which was the initial resource that funded our much smaller system of care that got us through to 2020. But here's where we are at, integrating all of these funding sources to create that much more expansive system of care in 2024. Much has been discussed recently about our program's expenditures over time, and this is probably a new image, I believe, before you today. We've been working on this as staff to prepare a program expenditure. So looking forward, we bring to you every quarter and in our annual reports our expenditures from the first 2.5 years, but we haven't yet prepared that programmatic or that planning work of what it will take to sustain the system of care that's been built. So that work has been underway here in Washington County in partnership with our county colleagues in Clackamas and Multnomah counties as well, to be paired with the new 5-year forecasts that Metro is putting out each year. So now when we get an annual 5-year forecast update from Metro, we will also produce an annual updated county forecast for expenditures. And this year you're looking at will be Washington County's forecasted expenditures going forward. And what's important to see is that, first I'll focus your eyes on the colored bars in the first 3 years. You can see that our expenditures, those are the colored bars, were much below the actual revenues received, which is the revenue line for those first 3 years. Those dots distinguish the actual describe the actual revenues received those 3 years. Pardon me, the first 2 years and projected into this current year, because we haven't yet received all the revenue for year 3. You can see that we were much below the actual revenues received, and yet each year, year over year, we're more than doubling our ability to spend these resources because our providers are hiring staff. Our shelter beds have been opened, right? Every month we do something more, we then pay for that more thing in the future months and quarters ahead. So we are quickly growing our expenditures, which sort of trails behind the actual programmatic work. Expenditures come a little bit later, so they're a bit delayed in representing that programmatic capacity. So looking ahead, it's important to see our programmatic capacity is going to be above the revenue line next year and probably right at the forecasted revenue line for years to come. This is because our system is now frankly, fully online. We have those case managers hired up. We will be housing kind of the total of our household goals at the end of this fiscal year or early into next fiscal year. And now we must sustain that capacity. And each year, sustaining that capacity costs a little more. Rents go up, which costs that's the purple color is ARLA, Regional Long-Term Rent Assistance, and also the cost of paying living wages for our contracted providers to be able to maintain their workforce. Those also increase, just like any cost escalation would. So we are now projecting that the program, the cost to sustain this program is going to cost approximately exactly or very close to what the forecasted revenue is, and we will adjust every year because that forecast revenue changes, and so will our forecasted expenditures. Now just a bit on the gray bars. The two first gray bars represent the carry forward funding received in years 1 and 2. And as you know, this shouldn't be a new slide. I'm sorry, that color's not coming very forward very clearly, but there's a light gray bar in the bar charts. Okay, yeah. Great. So this should be more familiar. This is our spend down plan of our carry forward investments. So the colored bars represent those areas of one-time investments we've prioritized in Washington County for those capital investments in shelters and access centers, and now transitional and recovery housing, which is work underway, and also short-term programmatic expansion like eviction prevention to prevent households from falling into homelessness in the first place. So we expect all of that carry forward funding that has been collected in the first 2 years to be fully spent down by the end of FY 26-27, with the exception, of course, of the program reserves and the stability reserves. These are required and recommended withholdings that are part of that carry forward balance, but should not be spent according to our IGA and good government financial procedures to ensure that we have funding available to be responsive to any major changes in the economies that will reduce the revenue in a given year, that will need to kind of fill up or fund those programs with those stability reserves, or a major catastrophe in a program where we need to increase costs, increase funding to cover those sudden costs. So those required and recommended reserves in the program and stability reserves, those are the gray bars, will not be part of they will remain in the carry forward balance, but they will not be spent down.
And the Green Regional Investment Fund is also a requirement. We saw that in the IGAs as well.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely. Yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Jess. So the gray thing is confusing me just a little bit, the conflict between this slide and the previous slide. Oh. So on the previous slide, I see the gray, and so we're holding on to that. And then the next slide, you show that we're basically continuing to hold on to that, except for we're spending some of that in 23, 24, 24, 25. So why didn't you add that to the previous slide so I could see what the total amount we're spending and where that money's coming from? So if I understand it correctly, then I'm perfectly fine with this. I don't want you modifying the slides or anything, but am I understanding that correctly?
You are, and thank you for describing that very clearly. We could take those colored bars and add them to the colored bars here in the years going forward to describe the actual full programmatic, the budgeted expenditures. What we wanted to describe here is what it costs to sustain the program, and because the carry forward balance are one-time investments, our expenditures will be above the revenue line, but we don't expect to sustain programming at that level because they are one-time investments. And that was the decision to separate them out. It's confusing, and I appreciate your clarifications.
Yeah, actually, I remember us having this conversation way back in year one that I said, please provide us with a runway on this with some of those reserve funds, and you're doing exactly that, so thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, moving forward. So again, where we're at so far in year 3, we are pleased to share with you that here, just concluding now the third quarter, we haven't compiled that report yet. We'll be having a Q3 report with the board soon, but we can share with you we are well on our way with many of the goals. Some of them have been completed already, and in Q4 we will be working to finish out these goals with our housing placements and some of our evaluation and monitoring programmatic work. But just a quick note on our progress to date with our year 3 goals, well on our way. I will also just take a moment to say we're seeing our housing placements slow in Washington County, and we're paying very close attention to what that is. We track them monthly. How many people are moving from shelter into housing or moving from housing instability into stable housing each month? And I think what we're learning is we've been able to house many hundreds, more than 1,000 of households through the SHS program who were most ready or most had the fewest barriers and could quickly move into housing stability. And now we're really focusing on those more challenging, complex households, and it's going slower, taking more support. And so this is also just an important reminder of why we need to really continue to focus on system improvement, expanding our system to include those transitional and recovery housing programs, because we're really laser focused on that chronic homeless population, Population A, and helping those who've been stuck outside for a long time get the supports they need to find housing stability. So more on that in your Q3 report soon, but just a note on where we're at so far today. And then we wanted to draw your eyes to some really exciting kind of overall progress of the system. To date, we have 10 coordinated outreach teams on the streets every day, working in a geographically coordinated fashion to connect people from unsheltered homelessness into sheltered programs and housing programs, building those relationships every day. We have over 440 shelter beds operating year-round right now. We have the capacity to provide supportive housing to more than 2,000 households, many of whom are still moving in as we speak to places like the Heartwood Common. And we also have the capacity to help more than 1,500 households every year with either eviction prevention or quick fix one-time services so that they can move back in housing and take over that lease and those rent payments on their own now that they have stable income to support that. So this system of care is in place as we speak and is what we are working to refine and sustain in the coming year. And with that, I get to turn the baton over to my colleague Nicole Sting to talk about year 4 more completely.
Thank you, Assistant Director Larson. And for the record, my name is Nicole Sting. I use she, her pronouns with your Homeless Services Division. I'm eager to dive into the work that's ahead as we've reflected on the work that's been done to date. This program year, as was mentioned, is about improving how individuals move through our system of care, thinking about each element and how we can improve it for the individual person to meet their unique needs. I'm eager to share the details of this work plan that was developed with the support and engagement of our providers, with the Homeless Solutions Advisory Council, and with the staff here in the Homeless Services Division, really understanding what our community needs and what are concrete goals that we can advance to meet those needs. And really starting at a high level, some of those concrete goals continue investing in what's working and expanding what's working. So that includes leveraging and increasing the coordination of by name lists and looking at the individual in need. It also includes helping people move through from that early stage into to graduation. Maybe folks are on a level of service that they don't need anymore, and can we free up that capacity to invite more people into our system? We're also considering system alignments with other public systems, education being a key partner of ours, as with healthcare and all the opportunities that are brought on with the Medicaid 1115 waiver. Really is an exciting time to be doing this work. And on top of all of that, we need to celebrate this work and tell the good story. We've heard a lot from Metro Supportive Housing Oversight Council or Committee about the need to tell the story of SHS, and we're reflecting that in our own system goals to support our providers in telling their stories, not just about the good work they do with SHS funds, but how they're making a difference for our community. So that's a key part of our goal, is to support our providers in telling their story. And of course, along with any system improvement goals, equity has to be foundational to what we consider the work to be done. Now, we've mentioned how folks access our system. We understand language access to be a barrier. We're hearing that from our providers, from folks with lived experience. And we'll be working on system interventions to increase language access at every stage of our system of care. That will include increasing culturally responsive training for our providers. It's work that's underway. It's work that we know works, so we'll keep investing in it. And on top of that, as we think about equity goals, we're continuing conversations with providers, with school districts, with others to understand where are some of the gaps in our system and where should we be setting further goals for ourselves. That will also include working with our tri-county partners on a regional equity lens tool to help ensure that across our regional continuum of care, our regional system of care, that we have the ability to take advantage of some of the existing capacity in other counties that have stronger and built-out teams, and bring that learning, best practices, and promising practices here to our community. We all know folks travel across county lines, and we're eager to take that learning across county lines as well. And along with building a system, we must strengthen, sustain what we've done to date. So that includes acknowledging the work we've done to build out a shelter system, to build out those 10 outreach teams that Assistant Director Larson mentioned. We have to sustain that work. Along with sustaining that work is sustaining the capacity to support 1,665 households with supportive housing. I'm saying that metric goal because it's important as we think about these broad system goals, that we're tying metrics to them so we can have measurable outcomes and be accountable to those outcomes. So there's additional goals that are metric related on your slide here, including keeping folks in their homes. Again, analyzing our system of care includes the folks that are currently in our system, might be in our system for a while, and that we have the supports needed in place to keep them stably housed. And some other metric goals that we're keeping a close eye on are the new placements, thinking about the SHS measure commitments to Population A and Population B. For those of you that might have had this piece of information lapse in your brain, Population A is a quasi-measure for chronic homelessness. So it's looking at folks that are experiencing or at risk of prolonged or episodical homelessness and have one or more disabling factor. That's really a target population for our system, and with Population B being essentially everyone else at risk that might not meet that population, so other eligible households. And on top of that, that work, we know the inflow of homelessness is deeply impacting communities. So eviction prevention remains a priority and a goal for us to prevent evictions, to stop the inflow of homelessness, and keep families stably housed. Along with this, a lot of the work that we've planted seeds for in the last 3 years are getting ready to bloom. That includes opening a new permanent shelter in Beaverton that we expect to open this calendar year, and beginning to fund some of those transitional and recovery housing that we brought before you back in December. So I know I walked through this very quickly. There's a lot more detail in your materials. Before I turn things back over to Assistant Director Larson to facilitate a discussion with you all, wanted to elevate just some key timelines. As required by our IGA, we submitted this draft work plan to Metro on April 1st. That doesn't mean it's done. This is still very much a draft work plan. We're eager for your feedback, and we're continuing to talk to members of the community, and we'll be finalizing and submitting our work plan with our approved budget this summer. So we again still have time for input, and we're eager to hear from you.
So board, this is our time. As we know, our staff is expected to come to us with what they're striving to do with the Year 4 work plan. And so this is our time to check in and give our thumbs up on that so that they can move forward in taking that to our regional partners. So, do any of you have any thoughts, reflections, or questions with regard to the material that we've seen today so that our staff may move forward?
I do, but I'll.
Go ahead.
No, thank you very much again for this great report. The only thing that the best part about this to me is again, this is something that we've been talking about now for 3 or 4 years. How do we not only deal with the homeless situation we have right now, but how do we prevent it getting worse? And so I sat on the Finance Committee of Community Action, and so I get to see how we are taking this money and putting it into a provider who is then taking it to the road. And so I'm really excited to be able to see that connection. Then I know that Commissioner Treese is on Community Action's Board of Directors, and so she gets to also see that next step. But to me, that's a great thing. I mean, you're taking care of the immediate problem, but also you're preventing, not making it worse, and stemming that. So good job on that. Thank you.
Commissioner Treese.
First of all, I want to say congratulations. I mean, there's been a tremendous amount of heavy lifting to get our county to the point where we are, and it is greatly appreciated. I think I would echo what Commissioner Willie said in relationship to the prevention aspect. It's kind of the unseen piece that we really need to be communicating to our community at large. That's the hardest piece to understand in this, is that where that money is going and how effectively it is stemming the tide in relationship to our vulnerable population. So that's one piece I would say we need to keep talking about this. We need to keep underscoring the fact that not only are we dealing with encampments that all can see, we're dealing with the other side, which is the cliff in relationship to falling into that type of situation. So that would be my one piece. I just want to keep telling this story. And the other piece here is that there's been so much talk in the media and in the public space about this funding, and I want to publicly state that I am so proud to be a board member here, but I'm also proud to be a community member here in relationship to how Washington County has stewarded our funds in relationship to this. So please hear that on 10, and it's important to me that you hear it, and also, frankly, that our public hear it as well. So thank you, and keep up the good work.
Commissioners Rogers or Fye? 1, 2, 3.
No, thank you. It's always good to hear what's happening. I know, as Commissioner Willie said, this has been about 3 years in the making, but this process is going to be going on for years and years and years, and this program will be going on years and years and years. We know it's 10 years. And the wraparound services and what we make of them are going to last for a long time, probably outliving certainly this board, but you as well. So thanks for being at the inception. That's the important thing, is kind of getting it moving. Let's just hope the successes continue and we continue to see people have positive outcomes in their lives, because it's not beneficial to anyone to have people homeless, not beneficial to anyone to have people who are not plugging back into the system. It's a wasted life, frankly, and so it's good information.
Commissioner Feig?
Thank you, Chair. Justin, Nicole, great job. This is a great presentation. I really appreciate the information you shared and the amount of time and effort you put into. In relation to the public conversation about the supportive housing services, and then this work plan that you're submitting to Metro, does this show your work, which is the question out there in the public, what counties need? So does this show if the supportive housing services measure, or the question is put to the voters, does this work plan tell the story of what our need is to continue to do the great work that you've been doing? I feel like I was going to say we, but it's really the staff that's been really having this positive impact in the work, and we just stamp what you've been doing. But does this tell the story of what we need to continue to that kind of a service? Because it sounds like the question will be put to the voters and it will be up to the Tri-County voters. In the meantime, does this tell the story of what our need is in Washington County?
Thank you, Commissioner, for the question. I can assure you that our staff team is working to make sure that every opportunity we are presenting our story of the work underway with the supportive housing services measure, we're putting front and center what it costs to then sustain this system of care that has been built. This is new data that's been compiled as quickly as possible. We haven't, up until, well, we still don't have yet a methodology identified as a region by our partners at Metro, so the Tri-Counties worked together to create a methodology that will hold us and get that story out and front and center. And we've shared this information with the Oversight Committee, where the chair sits. We will be sharing it with the stakeholder advisory table that Metro has convened to consider this ballot measure tomorrow. We're sharing it with you here today. It's on the 2-pager that we're sharing to get out the word. So thank you for that reminder how important it is to continue to tell the full story of what it will cost to sustain the system of care.
And the last question I had, and this could be an off conversation you and I have, I try to really follow what you were saying and read the materials about the program reserve and stability reserves. I'm not sure I'm fully on board of the difference between them and the magnitude of its impact.
Sure, I'd be happy to quickly describe both and then take further questions or conversation offline. So they are both described in our intergovernmental agreement with Metro regarding this measure, and they have two distinct purposes. The first is a program reserves that allows counties to withhold up to 5% of our program budget for the purposes of, in the event of some incident with a program that is going to require additional costs for any budgeted year. Our current situation of having carryover funding to the extent that we have is not going to be a long standing state of this program. It's going to get spent down. And so when something occurs, we're going to need to have some resources in case we need to rehouse a shelter for 3 months due to a fire or something like that. Those are going to be programmatic expenses that are unforeseen, and that's what the program reserves are meant for. So we are allowed to withhold up to 5% and strongly recommended that we do. That's the program reserves. Then there's the stabilization reserves, which requires counties withhold no less than 10% for the event of an economic downturn, such that the forecasted revenue that our budget is based on is perhaps not actually received, and we will need those stabilization reserves to actually fund the contracts that we've committed. Every year, because we are moving so quickly as a region with this SHS measure, we're actually programming and budgeting based on forecasted revenue, not actual revenues in the bank. And so the stabilization reserves helps to manage for that potentiality, which is a real potentiality because of the nature of these taxes being based on rather volatile income sources. And in fact, we are withholding 15%, because the minimum is 10%, and the guiding recommendation from Metro is looking like it's going to shift towards 15%, because as we learn more about the volatility of the revenue sources, we might actually need more than 10% to be withheld. So that's where we're currently at right now with the two different reserve amounts, which are part of that full carryover, and we'll continue to adjust based on financial recommendations for the program.
Thank you, Jess. And then final question, and then I'll turn the mic off to Chair, is in the event that the question is posed, could we tap into those reserves from 2023, or could we tap into it to continue to keep the program alive?
In the case of the program reserves, that's a county decision. And so the answer would be yes. If the county deems necessary, we would tap into the program reserves for any such event. In the case of the stabilization reserves, in the IGA, those funds are restricted to the direction of the financial guidance of the 4 combined CFOs for the 4 jurisdictions. They convene as the financial review team, I think it's described as, in the IGA, and that is their sole purpose, to advise on the utilization of the stabilization reserves based on economic conditions.
But the program one, the board can make that decision.
Correct.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for taking the various commissioner questions. We know that it is not a foregone conclusion that the Metro Council will be advancing any sort of additional SHS funding question to the ballot. And after the Metro Regional Housing Stakeholder Advisory Team meeting tomorrow, our staff will be following up to make sure that you have access to that full presentation and can ask the team any questions you may have. I really want to share a couple of comments. I'm very proud of our Washington County team, and it's really energizing for me as one of 5 to see pictures such as this with our Homeless Solutions Council, because there are some days where it gets really rough to sit in one of these seats and move forward with the advancements that our community members, especially our most vulnerable community members, need. And knowing that these are experts in our community working with us each and every day and helping us provide for these services really speaks to my heart and energizes me. I want to bring forward, as you mentioned, that there is a new one-pager for the program. And towards that end, I just wanted to clarify something. For this one-pager, is this reflecting the outcomes of a projected complete year 3, or as a year 3 completed 3 quarters thus far?
Thank you, Chair. Great question. The numbers described on the first page and the second page describe our capacity to sustain. So how many folks we are serving, or how many shelter beds we are providing. They're a little bit different than our housing placement numbers every year.
Yeah, okay. And then on the back side, or page 2 of the one-pager, You spoke in the slides about how we're hoping to have one new permanent shelter open later this calendar year in the city of Beaverton. I know the city of Hillsborough is also working to do the construction update for another permanent shelter here in our community. Do you know if the target timeframe for that will be within years 4 and 5? I can't remember, which is why I thought I'd ask.
Unfortunately, there continue to be construction delays in projects across the spectrum. So we're seeing that right now underway with our Beaverton shelter that has already broken ground, or broken walls, as many of us were there to celebrate. We're seeing delays in also the groundbreaking of the Hillsborough shelter. So at this time, that shelter, I believe, is expected to close this coming fall.
The temporary.
The temporary shelter, and break ground this fall with a approximately 1-year construction timeline. So that would put the opening of that new shelter in Hillsborough in program year 5 at this time.
Yep, which could change and flow into year 6. So fingers are crossed. But in the meantime, onward ho we go. Thank you so much. I'm really proud of what you've been doing as the team. You included the draft annual report, the draft work plan. So I would ask my colleagues for a simple motion to enable our team to move forward to take this year 4 annual plan forward.
So moved.
All those in favor of doing so, raise your hand. Thank you, colleagues. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, next we will move on to board and commissions. So we have some staff who will be coming up to help us move forward with the Behavioral Health Council bylaws. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Well, yes, it's still morning. Good morning, Chair Harrington, Board of Commissioners. My name is Mira Samantha. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Health and Human Services. I just want to give a shout out to our partners in housing. What an incredible presentation and wonderful achievements that they have and excitement for the year ahead. So good job, housing partners. We are here today, though, to present some changes and revisions to our Behavioral Health Council bylaws. You did hear in work session earlier about our membership appointments. So this kind of ties it all together. We have Nick O'Cone with us, who's our Behavioral Health Division Manager, who will take you through the presentation. I do want to note for members of the public, there is a memo in the board packet that staff sent to you on April 2nd in lieu of a work session, really detailing these changes. So please reference that if you're a member of the public who want a little bit more background, but I'll turn it over to Nick.
Thank you, Mira. Good morning, Chair Harrington. Good morning, Commissioners. As Mira mentioned, my name is Nick O'Cone, and I'm the Behavioral Health Division Manager, and we're going to be talking about the Behavioral Health Council bylaws today. A quick overview of this presentation is an overview of our Behavioral Health Council. We're going to be looking a little bit at our bylaws history and some of the updates that were made. I'm going to talk about the process that led us to here, and then also to respectfully request the adoption of these revisions. As a really high-level overview, and this slide might look familiar from earlier today as well, but our Behavioral Health Council is a 19-member council that advises our Behavioral Health Division on its direction and also provides an independent voice to the Board of County Commissioners on the behavioral health needs of our communities. Several of the positions are dedicated to specific areas and/or groups, and the remainder of the positions are dedicated to members at large or community member advocates. The priorities of our council is always to be centering consumer and voice and lived experience, and to have that be uplifted in the direction of our division. Similarly, whenever we're looking at membership, whenever we're looking at our bylaws, we want to be ensuring a broad representation from our community and to look at ways to increase the diversity of our council. It's important to note that the Behavioral Health Council is is established in Oregon Revised Statute, and it's one of the core things that we have, or duties that we have, of our community mental health program. So looking at the history of our bylaws, they were actually last board approved and updated in 2003, and we had a very brief update in 2015 that was approved by the council itself. All previous council bylaws were approved under the name of the Human Services Advisory Council, and that really reflected that there used to be a single Human Services Division with two distinct programs, the Developmental Disabilities Program and the Behavioral Health Program, which each had boards and commissions that were under them and actually met quarterly together. When we were making updates to our council, we wanted to ensure that, to our bylaws, we wanted to ensure that they reflected that the Human Services Division was split into two separate divisions. We looked at reducing the number of members from 19 to 15, and that was really driven by the need to be able to meet a quorum regularly and to be able to do business. We really thought that having, or the council, thought that having 15 engaged members was going to allow us to conduct the business that we needed while also making sure that we were representing the communities that we were supporting. This also requests one non-voting member of the Board of County Commissioners to participate, and I believe that there was a letter sent to the Board of Commissioners from our council, really providing some context as to why that's being requested. In addition to these changes, we really sought, or the council, sought to be providing more definition related to the business that they're doing and to be able to guide the council as it's doing its work. The process that got us here today was that a subgroup of our council formed and actually met for 2 entire years to work on getting this right. There was a lot of community input amongst council members, and they brought it to our Behavioral Health Council for to vote on the language adoption to be brought to your commission on February 28th, of 2024. Following that vote, it was brought to both our county council and the Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement to review and provide comments and inputs on the bylaws. And as Mira mentioned, we submitted a memo to your board on April 2nd with 2 versions, both the final version that we're hoping to have adopted, and then also a version that tracks all of the changes from the last revision in 2015. And today, our request of the board is to approve the updated bylaws submitted by the Behavioral Health Council on April 2nd for adoption, and to bring this process to a close. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions with regard to the proposed bylaws? I would just ask for, well, presuming that we do adopt these, which I hope so, that if you could let the council know that it may take us until the formation of our new Board of Commissioners early next year to approach the question of who might be serving in that non-voting position. Because we have a lot of boards and commissions to cover. So, alrighty, is there a motion to adopt the modified Behavioral Health Council bylaws?
So moved.
All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to move on to public hearings, and there are 3 of them. And then after that, we'll have 1 action item. So the first one is with regard to public slope easements. We have a staff report. Welcome, Mr. Shetler.
Good morning, Chair Harrington, members of the board. I'm Stacy Shetler, county engineer. And before I get started with this first public hearing, I'd like to compliment you on your fashion choice this morning, Chair. in support of National Work Zone Awareness Week.
Orange for Public Works Safety Day. So we'll be taking some pictures as the board with some road signs right after this meeting. So.
So with that, we'll get on to the exciting part of the program here with a short staff report. So this proposed vacation is on Shoals Ferry Road. Shoals Ferry Road is the road headed diagonal across your screen into the upper right-hand corner. 175th, that then connects to Roy Rogers Road, is on the left side of your diagram there. And so I think a picture's worth 1,000 words, and so we'll talk about this picture a little bit. Shoals Ferry Road was improved in 2013. The construction you see there on the left of the picture was not there, so slope easements were needed. As this property came in to develop, they've constructed that retaining wall that you can see. You can see the stairs that will provide access to the street, and then their public access for vehicles will come from the neighborhood behind. So with this retaining wall, the slope easements are no longer needed. So you're probably asking yourself, well, why are we here? This usually doesn't take a public hearing. Well, not all the adjacent property owners signed the petition, so that's why we're here today. They were all notified that this was happening, and there was no written opposition. We were able to talk to the property owner that didn't sign it, and he was more worried about maintenance of the right-of-way. We were able to put him in contact with our right-of-way folks to explain that it's the adjacent property owner's duty to do that. And so that individual may come testify today, or there may be other input at the public hearing. So with that, we ask you to conduct a public hearing and then approve the resolution and order vacating the proposed public slope easements. That concludes the presentation.
Are there any questions on the staff report, staff presentation?
Yeah, one question. Yeah, I know that area well. There's nothing buildable on that slope, is it? I mean, that's just going to be, what, left in green space area, sort of?
Commissioner, there's actually like a 5-lot subdivision being built.
That's behind it.
Right. So the slope easements go away. That's where the wall is right now. So the wall holds up that subdivision. The slope easements are no longer needed for the road itself.
The subdivision will be built right to the wall?
Well, it'll be built behind the wall, but that'll be private property.
Okay.
So the right-of-way will be about a foot behind the sidewalk that you can see in there. Okay. And that's the typical right-of-way for a road that size.
All right.
So a related question, since we're on this picture. In 30+ years, if the concrete stairs start to fail or something else with regard to those stairs, who's actually responsible for that stairway?
That stairway is part of the development, so the property owners are responsible for that stairway.
As well as the wall?
As well as the wall. The wall is constructed outside of the right-of-way.
Yep. Okay. Yep. These are present all throughout our community. Thank you. All righty, so with that, I'd like to open a public hearing. Clerk Moss.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. I did not see anyone sign up in the back. Would any member of the public in the auditorium wish to provide public comment for up to 2 minutes on this public hearing as you've heard the staff report? Please raise your hand or start to come forward. Not seeing any in the room. Would any member online wish to provide public comment on this public hearing as you've heard the staff report for up to 2 minutes? Give you just a moment to utilize raise hand function. Not seeing any hands. Chair Harrington.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. And with that, I will close today's hearing and ask for a motion to approve the resolution in order to vacate the proposed public slope easements.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of adopting this, please raise your hand or say aye. Thank you, Commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. On to the next one, to legalize a portion of Southwest Edie Road as County Road 3343.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Again, for the record, I'm Stacy Shetler, County Engineer for Washington County. And this matter before you is a road legalization. And legalization is basically fixing a survey that has incomplete road records or some other flaw. And so this is just west of Sherwood. Edie Road has a big bend in it that's circled on the graphic there. The road alignment didn't match the survey notes, and the survey notes were incomplete, so a survey crew went out and surveyed that road. And so they found the defect, and so we're here to set that, the record for the location of that road. So the road itself has been traveled in its current location for over 100 years. It qualifies for legalization under the ORSs. And at the time the road was initially established, 40 feet was the right-of-way, so that's what we're recommending today. There aren't any permanent structures in the right-of-way. All the property owners were notified per the statutes. There's no known opposition to this legalization. And we ask that you open a public hearing, get input, and then approve the resolution in order.
Are there any commissioner questions on this staff presentation? Seeing none, I'd like to open a public hearing. Clerk Moss.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. I did not see anyone sign up in the auditorium. Would anyone in the auditorium like to provide public comment on this public hearing? As you've heard the staff report, just raise your hand, start to come forward. Not seeing any in the room. Would any member online wish to provide public comment for up to 2 minutes on this public hearing? Give you just a moment to utilize raise hand function. Not seeing any hands. Chair Harrington.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. And with that, I'll close today's public hearing.
Move for the requested action.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next, we're on to the third and final one for today.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. For the record, I'm Stacy Shetler, County Engineer, Washington County. And the trifecta today includes a legalization and an establishment, just to spice things up, on Milne Road and Gordon Road and Zion Church Road. So there's portions of Gordon Road and Zion Church Road in the dashed red in the kind of the lower right corner that are being proposed for legalization. There were defects found in the survey out there, and this proposed action will set the record for where that public road is. The part that's a little bit confusing is that this is also an establishment of Milne Road and Gordon Road and Zion Church, so this is like a combo deal. You're getting the legalization and then an establishment of these other roads at the same time. So both these roads have been traveled in their current location for over 100 years. Both sections qualify for legalization and establishment under the ORSs. 60 feet is the recommended road width right-of-way that we're requesting, and there are no permanent structures in the part of the portion of the road that's being requested to legalize today. And so, as with the other survey actions, the property owners were notified. There's no known opposition to today's legalization, and we ask that you open a public hearing to get other testimony, if there is any from the public, and then approve the resolution in order.
Commissioners, do you have any questions with regard to today's staff report? Seeing none, with that, I'd like to open a public hearing. Clerk Moss.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. I did not see anyone sign up in the auditorium. Would any member in the auditorium wish to provide public comment on this public hearing for up to 2 minutes? As you've heard the staff report, please raise your hand or start to come forward. Not seeing any in the room. Would any members online via Zoom wish to provide public comment on this public hearing? As you've heard the staff report, for up to 2 minutes. Give you just a moment to utilize raise hand function. Not seeing any hands. Chair Harrington.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. And with that, I'll close today's public hearing and ask for a motion to approve the resolution and order legalizing portions of Northwest Gordon Road and Northwest Zion Church Road and establishing Northwest Milne Road and portions of Northwest Gordon Road and Northwest Zion Church Road as County Road 3345.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Shetler, for making sure we have all that proper legalizations for our roadway transportation system here in Washington County. Next, we have another great development for the Center for Addiction Triage and Treatment. And we'll turn it over to our great staff.
Thank you so much, Chair Harrington. Well, good morning again. My name is Mira Samantel. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Director of Health and Human Services. We're really happy to be here before you today for this action item. It's a follow-up to the presentation we did at your work session on March 12th. Kristen Burke, our project manager for CAT, is here with us to kind of do a high-level overview of what you already heard on March 12th, but also clarifying some of the follow-up items per your board's request and then with the action item request. So I will turn it over to Kristen.
Good morning, Chair Harrington, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be back again today to talk about the CAT again, the Center for Addictions Triage and Treatment, as we also call it. Today, I'm here to provide just a really quick staff report for the action item, which is a request to adopt the names for the 2 buildings that will house the center. But I also wanted to spend some time following up on a few questions that were raised at the last presentation, which was at the work session on March 12th. As you know, the Center for Addictions Triage and Treatment will be operated out of 2 buildings, which were acquired for the purpose of housing this program. One building is located in Beaverton, the other building is located in Hillsborough. And each building will offer different services and is being renovated specifically for the services that will be offered out of it. As I described in the March 12th meeting, we did have a process for developing the naming recommendations. And so I went over that on March 12th, so I won't go over that again. But there were several follow-up questions that I did want to go over today, just to make sure that all of the questions were answered and then open up an opportunity for additional questions if needed. First, the question was whether there was a county policy related to naming of buildings. We did verify that there is not a county policy. Another question that was raised was the nature of the feedback that we had received. I want to acknowledge that we had labeled the slide that we had received community feedback. However, it really was stakeholder feedback. It was individuals that had lived experience of having a substance use disorder, and also a lot of our community substance use providers that provided input into the naming recommendation. So I just wanted to acknowledge that was an error in terms of the sliding that we presented last time.
But many of them have their own facilities where
Yes.
they've had to help community members find them. So they gave us the benefit of their experience.
Absolutely, and they were happy to participate in that process. And then now I'm going to go into a few other areas that were raised, and I want to go into those in just a little more depth. First, one of the questions that was raised was, what was the structure that is being used to name the center? And the reason for this is it is confusing. We have thrown out a lot of different names as we've been talking about the Center for Addictions Triage and Treatment. We've talked about the intensive services building. We've talked about the different services, the different providers. And so what we did is we went back and looked both internally and through our community to look at different naming structures that are commonly used and really tried to emulate those structures for the CAT project. So what we saw frequently, and there's some examples up here, both for internal Washington County as well as we looked at Kaiser, just as an example, looking at the organization name and then department and subdivision names within that organization, and then specific program or team names under those departments, and then also how they name their buildings. So we used that really as a structure for thinking about how to name the CAT program. So here's just an example of how it applies to Washington County. Obviously, this is very simplified and only a small slice of Washington County, but you can see how you have the organization name, the subdivision or department name, programs, and then how the buildings kind of relate to those names. So again, this is just one example. It gets a little more complicated when we start talking about the Center for Addictions Triage and Treatment, because we also have providers, unique providers that are offering the services. So this is how it looks in terms of our CAT project. So we have that umbrella name of CAT, which is really the collection of all the different services that are coming together to provide care in a really coordinated manner. underneath that, we have divided the services into intensive services and community services. And then within that are all the different service types for those. Now, the difference here is that because we have different organizations providing the services, we've really adopted a naming structure where we say sobering services provided by CODA, outpatient services provided by Solutions Group Northwest. And that way it's really acknowledging the important role of our community providers, and yet it's still part of the Center for Addictions Triage and Treatment. And we have consulted with our providers about this. It's important as we're thinking about the naming of the buildings. It's important as we think about signage and wayfinding, and also how we're publicly portraying the program. So as a reminder, this is what our groups have recommended as building names for the 2 buildings that will house the program, and has been widely supported by both the organizations that will be offering the services and as well as the feedback that we received. A few other areas of follow-up. One question was, well, how does this relate to the Tigard Recovery Center? And I realized that we haven't talked a whole lot about the Tigard Recovery Center. It's a program that has been in operation since 1988. It's got a really interesting history. It was a program that we developed in collaboration with Clackamas County. Both of the counties received some beer and wine tax and chose to develop a treatment program, a residential treatment program, as well as detox services at that time. And each of the counties contributed funding for it. And so this is actually a program that a lot of the CAT was modeled on, where the county is really developing the physical infrastructure so that services can operate outside or in that building, but operated by a community-based organization. A few years ago, Washington County purchased the other half of the building from Clackamas County, so the building is solely owned by Washington County at this point, maintained by Washington County, and the services are provided by CODA, who will also be providing a lot of the services at the CAT program. Our intent is to fold the Tigard Recovery Center into the CAT project. However, I also want to say part of the reason why we haven't really talked about it much is because once the CAT is up and running, we want to use that as a reflection point for this program to really do an evaluation of what are the service needs in our community. Is this the best use of that building? Should we be thinking about an alternative population? We'll be doing an effort to really evaluate the services. And then my fingers are crossed here, but I'm hopeful that we'll have a little bit of money left over after the CAT project is done, and we can do some renovations to the building to get it kind of back up to date. So that's part of the reason why we haven't talked about Tigard Recovery Center a whole lot, is that there is work to do as we fold it into the project. The other question that came up is, okay, so Hawthorne Watkins Center is part of the CAT, but how does that reflect in the naming? It gets really confusing because we have a separate name for the Hawthorne Watkins Center, but we've been talking about it being part of the CAT program all along as well. And so this is one that, again, we did a lot of reflecting on and thinking about it. The interesting thing about the Hawthorne Watkins Center is we did a very, very deliberate naming process for this center before it opened. We were trying to make sure that it was very clear what services were available, that it was walk-in, so no appointment was needed. And we specifically called out mental health and addictions care because we didn't want community members to not come because they only saw crisis or only saw mental health or only saw addictions. And so it's a cumbersome name, but we did that intentionally because we wanted to ensure that community members could find it if they were doing web searches, that they could make sure that they knew that the services they needed were available at that site. For this reason, we really have a strong desire to keep the name Hawthorne. It has been really well socialized in our community. We hear a lot of our law enforcement partners, we hear a lot of our community members that we serve at the center refer to it as the Hawthorne or the Hawthorne Walk-In Center. And so we're nervous about not using that name. And so for that reason, we're intending to keep using the name Hawthorne Walk-In Center, but using it as Hawthorne Crisis Services to make sure that people know that that's available, but keeping it named that even as it's located on the CAT campus. It does have its own separate entrance, it has its own signage, but it is going to be a coordinated organization within the CAT umbrella.
But it will be moved into the Hillsborough building.
Yes, it will. And again, like I said, it will have its own separate entrance, which is the one distinguishing thing about that program versus the other programs. And that was a decision we made based on best practices for clinical interventions. So our next steps are to really, once we have names for the building, we're going to finish working on some branding. We're actively developing signage for the buildings right now. And so we will be incorporating the names of the buildings, the county logos, and all of that into signage. And then we're going to develop a marketing plan. We're getting to the point where it's time to really start letting the community know about the program. And so planning for the staging of how we let the community know, when we let the community know, and how do we make sure that they know which services are opening when. So with that, we are requesting that you consider an action item to adopt the following building names: Beaverton Recovery Center and Hillsborough Recovery Center.
Commissioners, do you have any questions with regard to the proposal for today? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion to approve the naming scheme for these two buildings.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Any opposed? Thank you, commissioners. It is unanimous, 5-0.
Thank you.
Way to go, team.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we're moving on to our second public communications opportunity for today's meeting. This is an opportunity for members of our community to address the board for up to 5 minutes an individual. Clerk Moss, do we have anyone who wishes to do so?
Thank you, Chair Harrington. I did not see anyone sign up in the auditorium. Would anyone in the auditorium wish to provide public comment on any county-related topic for up to 5 minutes? Give you a moment to raise your hand and start coming forward. Not seeing anyone in the room, would any member online wish to provide public comment on any county-related topic for up to 5 minutes? Give you just a moment to utilize raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Chair Harrington.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. And with that, we'll move to board announcements. I would like to share some upcoming activities. The board will be hosting a forum by invitation on Thursday, April 18th with our state legislators starting at 6 p.m. On Tuesday, April 23rd, we'll have a work session starting at 2 p.m., board meeting at 6:30 p.m. Next Monday, is that next Monday already? Wow. We're going to have our first full initial budget committee meeting. And this is when all three of our budget committees will be coming together. And Ms. Angie, our great county administrative officer and also our budget officer, will be presenting her proposed budget for the three different budget committees to review as part of their work. We had a great overview training last night that was recorded. You can find that on the Washington County website. Then we're into the month of May. I'm not ready for it, Commissioner Willie. Tuesday, May 7th, we'll have a work session that starts at 9 a.m., a Housing Authority Board of Directors starting at 10 a.m. The board meeting will immediately follow that at approximately 10:40, and then, as usual, we'll reconvene in our work session that afternoon. On Thursday, May 9th, this is when we'll be wearing our other hat, serving as the Clean Water Services Board of Directors, joining the other members of the CWS Budget Committee meeting starting at 9 a.m. The following Tuesday, May 14th, is entirely a work session day starting at 9. Yeah, May's busy. The following day, Wednesday the 15th and Thursday the 16th, we'll be having more of the Washington County Budget Committee meetings. But also on the 16th, we'll have public comment on the proposed budget. Before the various budget committees. That will be starting in the early evening at 5:30 p.m. And you can do so in person here in our auditorium or online via Zoom at your convenience, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Then on Friday, it's a busy week, we have another set of budget committee meetings. Then we're into the following week. Tuesday, May 21st, 2024, we have work sessions starting at 9 a.m., pausing until later in the afternoon, and a board meeting at 10.
Chair Harrington, if I could just make one editorial. You were on a roll, so I didn't want to interrupt you.
Just reading what's on the sheet.
So April 29th is actually, in essence, 2 weeks from now. It's not next week. So you sent a quick sense of panic through my veins because I know we've got still a lot of work to do as staff. So I just want to make that clarification for members of our public.
Yes, thank you very much. Oh, good heavens. Thankfully, I haven't missed a week of the month. Yes. Great. Are there any other board announcements? Okay, I just want to remind the board that we will be joining with our staff. They made off with the signs already. I thought we'd do it inside, but we're going to be taking some pictures to help with spreading the word for tomorrow is Wear Orange Day for road public safety for all of our public works and construction crews out there diligently maintaining and expanding facilities for our benefit. With that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously, 5-0. We're hereby adjourned. Thanks. Bye. Where'd they go?
Yeah, they were setting it up out there.